So good morning everybody and welcome to Itaipava. It's a really interesting town. It's known for its breweries and its beer culture. I've been staying here just 2 days now, and today I'm actually going to the city of Petrópolis, which is known as the Imperial City. It's about a 25-minute drive from here. So yeah, I'm really excited to get to know Petrópolis. It's meant to be an interesting place. Yeah, so I'm ready to go now. We're now in the city of Petrópolis, the Imperial City, and behind me is the first place where we've stopped. This is called the Crystal Palace. My guide Thaíz told me just now that it was completed in 1884. It was actually a gift from the husband of Princess Isabel, so the daughter of Dom Pedro II. Her husband was called the Comte d'Eu, and he was actually a Frenchman. He gave this Crystal Palace to her so that she could cultivate plants and flowers. So today is actually closed. They are doing renovations on the Crystal Palace, but it's a very beautiful building and very historic. So I just read on this plaque that the Crystal Palace was actually made in France in 1879 and is the first prefabricated structure assembled in Brazil. In 1888, Princess freed the last slaves in the city before the abolition of slavery was declared. So now I'm at the main cathedral in Petrópolis. So this is officially called the Cathedral of São Pedro de Alcântara. So it was actually started in 1884, but it wasn't completely finished until 1969 when they put the tower on the top. So this is one of the main sites in Petrópolis, and it was built on the instigation of the imperial family. And this square is called Praça Princesa Isabel. And we're right in the centre of Petrópolis now. This cathedral was built in the neo-Gothic style. Yeah, so let's go and have a look. So here, right in the centre, is the graves of Dom Pedro II. So he was the Emperor of Brazil for the majority of the 19th century. So he became Emperor in 1831 until the Republican Revolution in 1889 in Brazil. So he's the one in the centre on the left. But he actually died in Paris in 1891. And next to him is his wife, Cristina Teresa, I think her name was. She was actually from Italy and married Dom Pedro II in Brazil. And she actually died in Porto, in Portugal, in 1889 after the revolution. So on the left hand side you can see the grave of Princess Isabel. So she was Dom Pedro's eldest daughter and was also the heir to the throne at the time of the revolution. And on the right hand side is her husband, who's called the Comte d'Eu, who was a Frenchman who moved to Brazil to marry Princess Isabel, and they remained married throughout their life. When the Republican Revolution actually happened, they ended up moving to France in the town of Dreux, which is right in the north of France. I think it's in Normandy, and they lived there until Princess Isabel died in 1925, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a really important place for Brazilians to come and see where their old imperial family is buried. So interestingly, none of these people actually died in Brazil, but they were all brought back and buried here as a place of memorial so that people could come and pay their respects to the imperial family. So this area of the church is called the baptistry.
Aqui está o padroeiro mesmo da igreja, o São Pedro
So from outside the cathedral you can see the river. Yeah, so this is one of the central squares in the city. Very busy tourist point for people coming to visit Petrópolis. So just outside the cathedral they've got this obelisk and the statue on top. So this is Julius Kohler, and he was actually a German man who designed the city of Petrópolis, but he died in an accident in 1847. I just read that on the plaque. So he actually died before the city was completed, but he was the one that designed it. And if we look a bit closer, we can see a map of Petrópolis that was designed by him, and also the coat of arms of the city of Petrópolis. So P2 is referring to Dom Pedro II, Dom Pedro II. The name Petrópolis actually just comes from the Latin city of Peter. It was built in the honour of Dom Pedro II, or Dom Pedro II as they say in Portuguese. He was the one who was responsible for designing and paying for the construction of the city itself. So this spot was chosen because in the 19th century it was still the time when Rio de Janeiro was the capital of Brazil, and they were looking for a place to go to in the summer to get away from the heat of the city of Rio de Janeiro because it gets very hot there. This location was good because it's high up in a mountain range called the Serra Fluminense, and it's much cooler. So they could come here to get away from the stifling heat that exists in Rio de Janeiro, but it's also just a 1 hour drive from the city itself, so it's very close. That's the history, and that's why the coat of arms has got that P2 on it, because the city was constructed by Dom Pedro II. So just over the road from the cathedral is Princess Isabel's house. This is where she lived with her family. Apparently this was built because she wanted to be close to the cathedral. She was a very religious person. So the Casa Princess Isabel's got fantastic gardens that have been very well kept. Yeah, but they've done a really good job of maintaining this house and looking after the gardens as well. So I'm now in Dom Pedro Square, or Praça de Dom Pedro, and this is the heart of the old town in Petrópolis. And right in the middle of the square you can see this statue of Dom Pedro II, his dates of birth. So it was actually erected in 1911, this statue, so a good 20 years after he died, and it was created by a French sculptor called Jean Magro. Yeah, it's a really impressive statue, and this square is very elegant, got lots of old buildings, got some Art Deco buildings as well, and I get the impression it's a place where people come to relax and chill out for the afternoon. Yeah, so here you can just see the name of the sculptor, Jean Magro, who's from Paris. At the back you can see his books. So Dom Pedro was a very intelligent person, very cultivated person. He was a polyglot and a polymath. He spoke, I think, up to 10 languages and was an avid reader. So this represents how cultivated he was. Wow, check out this palm tree. Really high. It must be over 100 years old. It reminds me of the palm trees in Campinas. Right now I'm on the Rua 16 de Março, so the 16th of March street, and this street commemorates the opening of the city of Petrópolis on the 16th of March. So it's full of shops, cafes, bars. It's one of the main retail streets in the city. So we're just going to stop for a quick coffee in this coffee shop called Saint Laurent, which is well known on the 16th of March street.
Café?
Pouco mais.
Tomar com leite?
Ok, sim.
Não vê lá a quantidade.
Tá bem. Obrigado. It's a really beautiful street, feels very European, quite a smart street with lots of upmarket shops and bars and things like that. So yeah, we're just having a quick pit stop and then we're going to move on to some more sites in Petrópolis. So cheers. This is the Avenida de Imperador, so the Emperor's Avenue, and here you can see the obelisk of the city. It's 20 meters tall, this obelisk, and it was erected in 1957, and it was to commemorate the 100 years of the founding of the city. Yeah, so that is the Dom Pedro Square over there. It's getting a bit warmer now, the sun's come out. So this monument is to commemorate soldiers who died in the Second World War, Brazilian soldiers who fought in Italy, and this is called Praça Expedicionário, so the Expeditionary Square. So I just had a look at the sign next to this building. It was designed by an Italian man called Giovanni D'Angelo, and it was opened in this form in 1933. Yeah, they're doing a full refurbishment of the building, but you can see the original features of the Art Deco there. Still really smart. So we're now walking to the Imperial Museum, yeah, which is one of the main sites in the city. We have arrived at the Imperial Museum in Petrópolis, and right in the center you can see the statue of Dom Pedro II. Yeah, so this is a really beautiful gardens areas outside the museum. You can see all the different types of plants and trees they've got here. Very green. So on this plaque you can see the date when Petrópolis itself was founded in the 16th of March 1843 by Dom Pedro, and then this building or this area became the museum, the Imperial Museum, in 1941 on the same day, on the 16th of March. So it's actually where the imperial family lived, and it was President Getúlio Vargas who turned it into a museum. So he was president at that time. I'm going to have a quick look around the gardens before going into the museum. Yeah, I just want to see all the different plants, all the different trees they've got. It's a really good variety here. Dom Pedro was very well known for being a horticulturalist and even a botanist. So he was very keen on cultivating the gardens, paid a lot of attention to detail to the plants and the trees and where they came from. And you can really see that here in the gardens. They've done a really good job of looking after them and preserving them. I'm now at the main entrance to the Imperial Museum. Yeah, it's got this very distinct pink colour. Very beautiful building. So the Imperial family used to live here, or rather stay here in the summer when they came to Petrópolis to get away from the heat of Rio de Janeiro, because it's a lot cooler here up in the mountains, and it's quite green around here as well, so there's a lot of relief from the heat. So after the Republican Revolution in 1889, this building was empty for a while, and then I think it was actually a school for a period of time, or a college, and then it was President Getúlio Vargas who decided it should become a museum to preserve the history of the imperial family in Brazil. So it's been a museum since the 1940s, and it's actually Brazil's most visited museum. So it's the most well visited museum in the whole of Brazil. So that gives you an idea of how important this place is. Yeah, unfortunately, you're not allowed to film inside the museum. There's a complete prohibition of cameras of any sort, even you're not allowed to use your phone. But it was incredibly beautiful inside. So the ground floor was mainly the old sitting rooms and dining rooms that the royal family had, and it was very ornate. A lot of the pieces were original and came from the original summer palace here, but also lots came from Rio de Janeiro as well, from one of the royal palaces there. And then on the second floor, it was the bedrooms and the other sort of sleeping areas for the royal family. And they had some of the original beds and furniture and desks and things like that. So it's very beautiful, and lots of portraits of the royal family, and also some photos of the imperial family as well. So there was also a room that was dedicated to the bicentenary of the independence of Brazil. So that happened in 1822, and there was a room to celebrate that. And also there was a exhibition celebrating the birth of Dona Teresa Cristina, who was the wife of Dom Pedro II. So she was born in 1822, and there were lots of portraits of her and telling about her life. Yeah, and then finally there was a small exhibition about German artists who visited Brazil in the 19th century, and they came here to do paintings of Rio de Janeiro, Petrópolis, and even parts of Minas Gerais as well, and some of them have done fantastic paintings, as well as writing books and documents, leaflets, all about their travels in Brazil. So this is a fantastic museum. If you're interested in Brazilian history, this is a must place to come to visit, to understand Brazil a bit better. And the gardens themselves are also really beautiful. So I definitely recommend coming here. This is one of the most interesting things you can see in the city of Petrópolis. This is the one bit that you are allowed to use your camera in, and this is called the pavilion. And in this part of the museum, they've got old carriages that the imperial family used to use back in the 19th and 20th century. So here's a fantastic painting called The Battle of Campo Grande by Pedro Américo Figueiredo de Melo, and it was painted in 1871, and it represents one of the final battles in the Paraguay War. Here you can see the carriage that was used by Dom Pedro II, and it was restored in 2010 to 2012. So this carriage was actually made by a British company, and it was made for the ceremony in 1841 when Dom Pedro II became emperor. So there was a regency for Dom Pedro when he was a young man, and then he became emperor when he was a bit older, and this carriage was made for him in 1841. But it was also used for the opening of Parliament and other official things that he had to do. So it's been really well restored. You can see all the details. And this is his coat of arms. And here you can see some more carriages. This is called Berlinda. These are all from the 19th century. Yeah, and a lot of these were pulled by horses. In fact, I think all of these were pulled by horses. And in this room you can see the sedan chairs that the royal family or the imperial family would have used. So these chairs were actually carried by slaves. They were even carried up mountains by slaves so that the imperial family could visit the top of mountains and see the view. So you can imagine how hard that would have been for the slaves carrying these sedan chairs. So here you can see an old train. It's called Leopoldina. and a carriage. So this was the line that linked Rio de Janeiro and Petrópolis, and it was opened in 1883 by Dom Pedro II, and it continued until 1964. And this was obviously quite a busy route between the two cities. I imagine this train is named after Princessa Leopoldina. So she was the wife of Dom Pedro I and the mother of Dom Pedro II. She was actually from Vienna in Austria. She was an Austrian princess. And this train is named after her. So this is a coal-powered steam locomotive train. And they've obviously preserved and renovated this carriage really well. So this part is called the Pavilion de Viaturas, so the pavilion of carriages, and it's just a small side part of the museum. Yeah, okay, and the train inside is named after this lady, Carolina Josefa Leopoldina, so the first Empress of Brazil, and there you can see the dates in which she lived.
Gente, aquele ali, vou te contar. Peraí, isso aí é o outro.
Tá na boca, direita.
Tá na boca? Não, na boca não posso dar.
Pô, direita na boca.
Peraí,